Culture and conditioning, I think we can agree, might be two chief factors that hugely influence us as human beings. And really, from the time we are born, even before we have developed an emotional and intellectual understanding, our bodies start responding, reacting, and storing the stimuli that bombards us and engulfs us and surrounds us. And as we grow older, our decisions, preferences, worldview, outlook, understanding, perceptions are largely guided by this stimuli that we have at some point, consciously or unconsciously, to a certain extent, decoded. Now, in this entire realm, it may be fair to say that individuals who are involved with any kind of artistic pursuit are perhaps more in tune with this stimuli and with themselves and with their own emotions and feelings because I think in my experience artists do sort of ingest and digest and analyze the world through certain lenses and perspectives that tend to be more in number and more nuanced than regular people. And so we are very, very privileged and happy that we are being joined by an artist today to examine what might be some factors that have shaped her in becoming the individual she is today, and what sort of impact, good or bad, some of those factors have had on her mental state over the period of many years. We're calling this edition of Talk Therapy, brought to you by Driveway Devi, The Impact of Influence. I'm Karthik on behalf of Driveway Devi, and joining us is artist Neha Luthra, who's had a very interesting journey, pun intended, until she has arrived in our beautiful city, the pink city of Jaipur. But she's called several very interesting parts of the planet home at different points. She has an admitted affinity to nature. And with Neha, we hope to have what promises to be a very, very interesting conversation. So, Neha, very warm welcome and thank you for making time to do this.
Thank you for thinking of including me in your series.
Wonderful. So, like is sort of tradition with us, instead of me completely botching up my guest's introduction, we usually ask our guest in their own words to tell us a little bit about themselves, and particularly in your case, about your artistic endeavors and art practice, please.
Okay, so I was born in India, but when I was 10 years old, my parents, we moved to Poland, my family and I, to Warsaw. So I spent most of my childhood in Poland, and then I went to university in Scotland at St. Andrews, and I studied art history and management. And then I guess after that, I've kind of changed careers three times in the span of, in my 20s. I started off, in a career in marketing, and then I moved into textile design because I always had more of a creative inclination, and you're trying to sort of figure out life at that time. So I said, okay, let me try doing something more creative, and I moved to New York, and I was, I did a program at FIT in surface pattern textile design. And then COVID happened. And, for me, that was an experience that completely flipped life. I got locked down in India, and got locked down here twice actually during the first wave, which was completely, I had no idea that I would be here for so long. I came to India for a wedding in February, and I stayed till June. Um, And it was during that time that I have a mentor so I lived in Greece, and that's where I was working in marketing. And over there I met my mentor, who's a contemporary artist, Despina Sevasti, and I reconnected with her during COVID. And just on Zoom, speaking, painting, getting feedback. Because I knew I didn't want to continue doing textile design. I didn't I even when I was in New York, I didn't it didn't fully resonate with me. And so during COVID, I just kept painting and painting and painting. And then I got locked down here again. I went back home to Poland, and I came back. And then at that time, I got engaged. So I ended up moving to Jaipur, which, if it wasn't for COVID, I don't think I would have been
It's
in India right
interesting.
now.
I can't help but jump in. So both the times you were locked down in this country was on account of a romantic alliance.
Well, yes, I kind of I mean, I think with life you just have to go with the flow sometimes. There are certain things that you really don't have in your control. So I came here for a friend's wedding. But I mean, I had a boyfriend here as well. We met in university, and so yeah, I got locked down here twice, and then I was painting throughout that time. And even when I went back home to Poland, one of my mom's friends is an artist, and she wasn't around because she got locked down somewhere else, and she let me use her art studio. So, every day I would, even though it was lockdown, I could leave my house and I would just go to the studio all day and just keep painting. And it was painting for pleasure. I never thought that I would transition into doing this full time, because even as a child I used to, it was more like a passion and a hobby. And then I studied art history, and I always felt like if I did do art, I would prefer being an artist, but it was too daunting to think that I could make a career out of it. It's not a very straightforward career path. And I was scared to just make it my life, and that's why I think I did textile design instead of fine art, because it's a more professional degree and a more professional career path. So that's basic. And so I've been in Jaipur for the past 3 years now, and I've been a full-time artist since I moved here.
I would have asked you this perhaps later on, but something you mentioned has kind of preempted this question, and I ask it not to be facetious or to irritate you needlessly, but because I know for a fact that this has a significant psychological bearing on a lot of people who do choose to make the fine arts a full-time pursuit and lifelong pursuit. Is precisely what you said, that there was a certain amount of trepidation, reluctance, whatever you want to call it, in painting full time. Talk a little bit about that reluctance, because for so many incredibly talented individuals, they either, sacrifice that dream altogether, or even if they're doing it alongside, they have to succumb to the very frustrating, strains of taking commissioned projects and work in order to, generate that livelihood.
Yeah, so I mean, what you said, generating that livelihood, that's a big factor that sort of discourages, let's say, many people from doing this full time, because it's very difficult to make a life out of art. It's either if you're doing something like, let's say, illustration or graphic design, or I mean, in India, what I was tempted to do when I first moved here, I was, I would say yes to everything. So I had commissions ranging from, like birthday invites and um wedding invites to portraits and things like that. And I would say yes to everything, because you need to be able to sustain your work, your life. And so that's a huge concern, and that's a huge reason, I guess, why people choose uh, other other professions. Than when you're actually painting, or you're a full-time artist, there's a lot of other factors that I wasn't I won't say prepared for, but that kind of seep in besides the financial aspect. It's very solitary work. And there's a lot of self-doubt and fear and questioning and constantly, you don't feel like painting every day, but this is what you've chosen to do. And it's not like going into an office where the work is kind of laid out for you and you kind of, you're accountable to someone. Here you're by yourself, you're independent, how you spend your time. And I think, artists are great procrastinators. There's like so much I wouldn't say fear because there's a lot of joy as well, but yeah, it's when faced with a blank canvas. For me, in the beginning, when I during COVID when I was painting, it was from a place of interest and joy and learning. And I had my mentor who I would speak to, every other week, and she would, introduce me to new artists, and a lot of times I was kind of referencing them. But when you're on your own, it's you don't I didn't realize how, initially it's like, what do I have to say? What do I want to say? Why does it matter what I have to say? There were all these like existential questions. It's not just like, oh,
Absolutely.
in the beginning I was, I was like, okay, just I'm here, I'll paint, and I had other sort of creative interests as well. But I'm in Jaipur, so whether it's like jewelry design or things like that, where I thought so when I decided to move to India, I said, oh, I can do all these things in Jaipur. There's so much possibility to be creative here. But I realized that I just like to paint. I don't want to kind of dilute that interest and spread myself too thin. But then when you're painting, there's so much that space between your hand and your mind. How you feel comes across. So if you're stressed, if something is bothering you, if however you feel, it comes across. And it took me a while to understand that it's okay for that to come across. It's okay to just keep making bad work if you're not feeling like it. It's okay for to give space to that. I mean, it was very frustrating initially because it was a huge change for me to move to India. I hadn't lived here since I was 10. And so, I wasn't feeling great. And then the whole adjustment of like, this entirely new life, new routine, new work, it's so much burden on the output, on your final piece. So you're never happy with it because you're trying to seek perfection, which doesn't exist. So I think that was a huge learning, which was like, okay, you make something, you don't like it, it's okay, move on. Or, even while making a painting, let's say if the first hour, if you kind of feel like this is not going in the direction, it's okay to stop. You don't have to keep pushing it. So these are like, I think
But
that.
it's a very very precarious tightrope walk, Neha, isn't it? Because you simultaneously somehow have to have the objectivity to know that there is a certain degree to which you have to push. Because while at the one end of the spectrum there are things, as you mentioned very rightly, which are existential in nature, at the other end are also very very practical and logistical concerns of, because it is so solitary and one is monitoring oneself, and the infamous propensity of artists to be procrastinators, and those chai and sutta breaks becoming infinite in number and time duration. Also the discipline of it, and the fact that you have to get down to it every day. You have to push a certain amount every day, otherwise you just sort of get completely lost. I know that when I'm trying to write or make music, this happens all the time, and it sort of swings between what the hell am I even writing and who gives a damn, to that very. Sometimes I have these delusions of grandeur that, oh my God, I shouldn't be in my 10 by 10 study in Jaipur. I should be along the Thames or in some remote secluded part of the Garhwal Hills, looking onto some really really inspiring vistas, and then it'll flow from inside of me. And then of course my partner immediately reminds me that I have no such luxury, and that I shall come out of my bubble. So all of those things, I suppose, have an impact. Do you now have you reconciled to the fact that you are doing this as ostensibly your lifelong pursuit, um, especially in terms of, because when you and I did speak earlier, especially given that you aren't, at least yet, very, let's say, commercial.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing anything else. I mean, you talk, there are days that I don't feel like painting, but I still come to my studio. I come here on Sundays and I'm happy to be here. I think having this space and this independence, on one hand, it might be isolating, but on the other hand, it's also a gift. It's a privilege to be able to do this, So I think once you, how do I say this? I can only speak for myself, but once I decide I need to do something and that feeling of inspiration comes, there's I mean that's there's nothing like it. And sometimes, let's say you're in this space of creating, and let's say I have like maybe a family obligation or something like that. If I have to leave my studio, it feels almost like you get your like if you're getting ready for a party, you're excited, and then suddenly you're told that you have to stay at home. Like it's like this
It's
this
very
impulse.
anticlimactic.
And I feel like it's not just, I think everybody has it in them to feel that creative impulse, or this impulse to create and to put your yeah, to do all these things. It's not something that's so, and artists are put on this pedestal like that, but I wasn't doing this always, but I feel it now, so it's just about tapping into it. And I think it's so precious, and everyone has it within them. Like it's not limited to painting and to making art. This kind of going inwards, or like this, like getting it out as well energetically, whether it's dance or there's so many forms, sport even, this kind of getting the energy across. It's
But I must ask you, and mercifully, you seem to be very aware of this, and you use that term yourself, privilege. Does that privilege, did it at any point, or does it continue to sporadically cause a little bit of guilt?
um initially, because uh I don't face, I mean, I'm very aware that I don't face the struggles that perhaps many of my peers need to face. I don't have to worry about, having food on my table. I'm married and I have a support system. So, basic needs are met. And I can, but initially I wanted to do everything super independently and, fight, do all the commissions, even very low paying, not nice ones. And I mean, when I was in New York, I was making minimum wage. I was doing like three jobs, working 7 days a week. I was, doing illustration stuff, textile stuff. I had two internships plus freelance. So but and then there was some sort of pride in doing that as well, that I'm, doing everything by myself. And I still, um, but I had to get out of that a bit. Otherwise, I would just be paralyzed with like sort of fear that, oh, I'm able to do this and I'm still not being able to do a good job.
Mm.
But it took, another mentor of mine who said that, you're so stupid. Like you're blessed. Why are you pushing against it? Like you have this
Yeah,
chance to do all of these things. You'd be, so stop feeling like that. Stop
right.
overthinking. Just do
Yeah.
the work. Create from the place that you want to, instead of taking up like, random commissions and doing illustration and graphic stuff which you don't enjoy.
Makes
So
sense.
that's the bit that I accepted it. It takes time to also let that sink in. Once I did that, I was able to I felt like I started painting what I wanted to paint.
I'm really, really happy that you had that little journey within yourself, because it was so important. I promise this is the last question. I ask it only in service of examining the mental state, particularly of a woman in today's world and society. Um, it's wonderful. You're blessed. You have this support system. Just to play devil's advocate, support systems can sometimes be fleeting or cease to exist for a number of reasons. Do you at all think of things such as, you know, on a rainy for a rainy day or for a certain phase of your life, you would personally want to have had some sort of generated some sort of wealth or savings, those kinds of thoughts, and also financial independence is so interwoven with a woman's independence.
I think that goes without saying. I mean, I'm not doing this as a hobby or just to kill time. I do sell my work and I do save my money. And for the most part, like 99% of my expenses come from myself. When I said that, in terms of privilege, I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to
Right.
worry about food. I don't have to, I rent a studio. I'm able to finance that myself. So I don't think it's ever good to be overly dependent on anybody, whether you're a man or a woman, or that goes without saying. That's how I was raised, and that's one of the big reasons why I never studied fine art, because I was like, I don't know how I'll be financially independent as an artist. So, that's the reason why I went into, even though I always painted, I'm not a trained artist. I didn't go to art school. So this is something that goes without saying. As you said, there's no guarantee of support. Although I have an amazing partner, I have my own, I have my own bank account, and I'm mindful of my expenses, and I don't take, I'm not frivolous with money at all, and that's not how I was raised either.
I'm
So
absolutely
yeah.
delighted to hear that. Speaking of, because I've also had lots of conversations with artists who haven't had that sometimes a little bit snooty art education. Do you feel that people in the art community sometimes look at you disparagingly because you don't have that art? You're a self-taught artist largely.
Other artists would never feel like that.
Uh-huh.
And if you're talking about the art community, I'm not in the art world, in gallery circles and in the fair circles. I have a lot of artist friends, and they are nothing but supportive, and many are self-taught as well. For example, there's an artist in Jaipur, Nandan Ghia, who's achieved a lot of professional success, and he's self-taught. So, and he's kind of like a mentor to me as well. So I don't feel that. I think the lack of art education, I think going to art school is incredible, and I wish I had been able to do that, but I know it was not in my path. Because the learning curve is amazing, the exposure to whether giving you that space to kind of experiment and really try different mediums, that safe space that you have in school. And then you learn so much from your peers as well. I was at FIT for a year, and that wasn't exactly like art school, but the kind of friendships and connections and support
Right.
that you get from that community aspect is incredible. So I don't think, I mean, as I said, I haven't been in the Indian art world for, as you said, I'm fairly new to all of this, and I'm fairly new to India. So I don't know how people will perceive me, but hopefully my work speaks for itself. And yeah.
Well, I think I've sort of grilled you enough about all of this. Let's move to hopefully more pleasant things in the sense of, some of your influences really in terms of your art. Again, when we spoke, you said quite directly that nature has always been central to not just your art, I mean, to you, and by extension, I suppose, to your art. Talk a little bit about some initial exposure to nature and how you came to be so close to it.
Um, so I realized this only after going to India, because I felt deprived of it. So I grew up in Warsaw, but in the suburbs of Warsaw. So I live 10 minutes from a forest. You go behind our house and there's fields, like just sort of fields. Um, and we grew up with in a very active lifestyle. My parents are very athletic. My father is nearly 60, and touch wood, he plays tennis regularly, he swims regularly. My mom teaches yoga. So we've always been, on weekends, and especially when the weather was good, we'd always be cycling or going for a walk. And to this day, every evening, my parents, after dinner, they go for like a walk around where we live. So being outside is something that I just grew up with. It was not a, you never think that, oh, I want to be in nature, that's why I'm going outside. It was just part of
It
life,
was second nature, pardon the pun.
it was not something you thought about. And then I moved to Jaipur,
Yeah.
and I'm in an urban environment, and you feel very claustrophobic suddenly. Then you realize, oh, it's because I've not been outside because it's too hot, or there's no spaces to be outside, and I can't walk as a mode of transport. So I felt very deprived of it. And perhaps, before moving to India during COVID, my subject matter was primarily like interior spaces. And I wasn't thinking so much about landscapes. And then moving here, suddenly I just wanted to paint the sky, and I wanted to paint fields, and because I missed it, I think. So um yeah, I mean, there's no question, as human beings, our natural habitat is to be outdoors. But what you do when the AQI is poor, when there's no spaces to be outside,
But I
to
want to ask you a very silly, stupid, naive question, possibly, especially to somebody to whom it was just part of life and not something that was thought about or needed to be thought about. Why do you think we have this, and by we I mean the human race? Why do you think we have this very intrinsic, sort of almost umbilic connection with nature? Why do you think we feel so good if we go for a trek?
I mean, again, a naive answer, because that's how we were supposed to be. We were not born to be like in built structures constantly. There's like a balance. You get fresh air when you go outside. This whole trend, you might have heard of it, the forest bathing. They show that, your physiological reaction, you have a chemical reaction to being outside, to being in greenery and in the company of trees, and it's innate to us. So and then there's also so much beauty to be experienced when you are in the outdoors, whether it's, like looking outside right now. I'm very lucky. My landlord loves gardening. So, I'm surrounded by bougainvilleas and nice plants. And sometimes I'm just like I'm just daydreaming and looking at these like bright, like pink flowers. And there's beauty in it that you get, where to feel a sense of wonder comes so easily when you're outside. And I think that's so important, to have this feeling of awe and wonder, to feel that. And it comes easily when when you're watching, when you're, experiencing a nice sunset, or you have nice views, or you're just in a park and you see birds or light falling in a certain way.
And therefore, especially given the kind of childhood you did experience, it's even more intriguing and interesting that life took you on a path where you've called a couple of very different cities and continents home at various points in time. Talk a little bit about what those stints were like, specifically in terms of how you feel. Maybe you didn't at the time, you weren't consciously aware, but now with the benefit of hindsight, what those periods in those specific towns or cities did in terms of your mental state. How did they make you feel?
So, I mean, when I was in Poland, I was in school, and I was one of the only Indian kids in my entire high school. So, and even when in elementary school. So I guess initially there was this I wouldn't say culture shock, but you feel different, and I went to an international school, so that difference, you kind of play on it even more. The first thing that you ask anybody who's new to school is like, where are you from? So that becomes a huge part of your identity.
Yep.
So I was very proud to be Indian because I was the only one. So I kind of felt like an ambassador. And then I felt the reverse when I moved to Jaipur. I, you know, I my accent might have become more Indian, and especially when I speak English, but there's so much that I wasn't expecting, and to feel frustrated about things and to feel joy at certain things, and it's a huge adjustment. Like just your basic things like buying groceries is not the same. The way you dress is not the same. The conversations people have is not the same. The everyday struggles that you witness are not the same. Your life is so different. So, it was
And
a lot of
I
change.
would
And
go
then
so
in
far as
between
to
that,
say very quickly to jump in here because it's an important point at which I want to ask you this. This kind of an adjustment, of course, you put it quite mildly. I think it's a tectonic shift. It's a complete sort of reset in so many ways. What have you done, if anything, to navigate that in terms of, have you been able to speak to a few people or to anyone specifically about it that has sort of softened your landing a little bit? Have you spoken to a professional? Has it largely been your partner or a close friend you've spoken to about this whole diametric change in lifestyle and circumstances?
yes. So, in the beginning, I mean, I've always kept a journal ever since I was like 10 years old or maybe younger. So I always had like a notebook on my bedside table. And I guess through COVID, through this, doing morning pages, I always used to write. But then after moving to India, I guess, I also got married and um, I moved to a country expecting to just figure out my work, the professional aspect of it,
Yeah,
which has always been so important to me. Just, it's a huge burden for like a partner to bear. If I'm blaming him or
of
just going
course.
on feeling frustrated that I'm not able to, navigate things. So actually, I have a spiritual practice, like a meditation practice
Mm-hmm.
that I've also done since I was, a teenager. But since moving to India, it's become a huge part of my life. It's an hour and a half. It's like a kriya that I do, and of course, with the practice, I also have like a guru, like a mentor, who she's actually a family member. Um, but I would not be able to I would not be able to I wouldn't have been able to do anything without her, to be
Sure,
honest.
of
The
course.
sort of I mean, friends, of course, are helpful, and I'm very lucky that I found amazing friends here who, one of my best friends, she's not from Jaipur either. She also got married to someone from here, and she's from the US, and she's similarly spiritually inclined, and we share this practice now. But to have her, you need someone that you can talk to about anything, whether it's your own problems, other people's problems that are affecting you, just anything, no filter. So you need at least, and whether that's a therapist,
Absolutely. I
or
mean, whatever modality or path or stream of consciousness it may be is immaterial, whatever works for you.
yeah, because energetically, it needs to come out. So, it comes out in work and dance and sports. I think sports is also exercising.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so important. Like if I end my day having gone to, do some physical movement and then gone home, I'm a better person. So, so combination of the meditation practice that I do, being able to speak to my guru about things and having perspective, I think the meditation helped me feel, more than anything, a sense of acceptance and a sense of, faith that things are as they're supposed to be. Like everything that's happening is not by chance. And that helped me feel like, sometimes I drive here So sometimes I'll be driving and I'll think, okay, I'm supposed to be here. Despite all the traffic, despite all the chaos, there'll be something I see and I'm just like, yeah, I'm supposed to be here. So, and I definitely think that clarity comes from things like this.
So there does seem to be a greater acceptance of, let's say, some sort of cosmic design. You also told me, if I remember, if memory serves me, that there was a shift where you found that you were becoming much more mindful and of the opinion that whatever is happening is sort of a blessing. It's a good development. You have lots to be grateful for.
Well, I think what a meditation, spiritual practice, or just being more present, I think what it does for you is, or at least for me, the practice that I do is very much like energetic in nature.
Sure.
But what it does, it gives you this clarity, and then when we go on trips with our group, and when you're on these trips, you just feel like everything you see is from the lens of blessings. Even things that might be frustrating, maybe there's certain people in your life or certain obstacles or hurdles, whatever. You just see everything that, oh, it's a learning, and it's easier said than done. But when you have this practice in your life so much, it's easier to embody that.
Hmm.
It's easier to feel like, oh, the sun is shining, this it's blessings. Or when I don't know, everything is
No,
good. Rather than
that
blessing,
makes
let's say
sense.
goodness. There's goodness in everything. There's, and every situation is perfect. Even the worst situations, they're here to like teach you something. But it's hard to feel like that independently when you're part of like a group, or you have this, let's say this community, or you have a guru that kind of, or maybe a therapist, whoever it is, to really like help you see things differently or reframe situations. Um,
It's finally, as we conclude, I must ask you, because we've been talking largely, again, pun intended, about very rooted things. We've spoken about nature, we've spoken about existentialism, we've spoken about a lot of very real, quote unquote, things. And as a sort of parting question, I must ask you, what is your sort of how are you seeing this advent of AI in the art space specifically?
um, so I don't use technology too much at all for my work. I might use AI for maybe research or to help streamline my thoughts in some ways, or if I need to, or to write emails, but I would not use it as a tool for, in terms of creativity, there's so much that is gets limited by AI. If it's doing all the thinking for you and the problem solving for you, and if it's creating things visually, I guess it's, maybe people who don't have this sort of avenue to create, if they feel creative while using AI, then so be it. But for me, I get so much pleasure from handling a brush and putting paint and making marks
Hmm,
that
hmm.
I don't, it just won't fit into my life at all. I mean, maybe I need to be a bit more open, but I've not had this interest to try to kind of, if I'm using an image as a reference to problem solve and to figure out how to respond to it.
Sure,
For
sure.
me, that's where that's the challenge that makes it satisfying.
Right,
It's
right. And that is then the most
yeah,
joyous part of the process, isn't it?
yeah. If someone else is doing it for you, then that's not you. And then additionally, I mean, the whole notion of copyright and using artists' work without, if I don't understand how that's even allowed.
Hmm. Are you
How other
somebody
people's
who
work
reads?
can be used, and people kind of say, "Oh, but I gave the prompt. It's my."
Are
It
you
just
someone who
doesn't.
reads on a Kindle, or do you read physical books?
Both. I read on a Kindle when I'm traveling, And when I was in New York and I had to commute on the, I had long commutes, and on the subway, it was just my Kindle fit into my jacket pocket. So I would just whip it out and read, and it was amazing. And also sometimes in the middle of the night, if I don't want to turn the light on and I'm not able to sleep, I'll have the Kindle. But if I'm reading nonfiction, I would never use a Kindle. I need to be able to underline and make notes and things like
Ah,
that. For fiction,
okay.
it's
Mhm,
okay.
mhm. Fair enough. Well, it's been a fascinating conversation, Neha. I'm so thankful for your time and for your insights and to have shared so honestly and openly. Uh, we wish you all the very best. I hope that you find greater and greater acceptance, not just of your present circumstances, but of everything. And I hope that your art practice flourishes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me.